And here we have another great video from the mighty Thomas Sowell discussing immigration.
In God we trust. And Jesus says, let the children come to me. Wouldn't you agree that we need to open our arms to Mexico?
No, because every country has to protect its own borders. There was a time when virtually every country in the Western Hemisphere not only allowed but encouraged immigration on a massive scale because they had the land and they needed the resources and so on. It's not at all clear that if you were to throw the borders wide open, let anyone come who wants to, that this would still be the same country 50 years from now. And so, in a sense, you can't let everybody come to America, because if everybody came to America, it wouldn't be America anymore. So that's not an option that we have. The most we can do is try to weigh many very different kinds of considerations.
Well, judging from the success of various groups in your book, who should come to America? How should we decide?
Oh, that's a much tougher one, but I think that we should say that we do have the right to decide. And if people who come here from country X do well and make America a better place, then let more people come here from country X. And if people who come from country Y simply come here and become a burden on the American taxpayers, then less people should come from country Y.
Yeah, and this video is from decades ago, and it's more relevant than ever. There's certain groups of people that are coming here that are extremely successful. Asians have the highest income. East Asians have the highest income in particular. And there's a number of people from Africa actually that do well, and from some regions, and then there's others from Somalia and so on that are mostly a burden and unfortunately not contributing to society, and instead just living off the welfare state. And if you look at the economic growth in Africa from the past few years, majority of the countries with the highest economic growth are more Christian than anything else.
One of the problems we have is that the welfare state makes it very expensive to let immigrants in. So you have a country like New Zealand, whose total population is less than that of New York City. And they have all kinds of barriers against immigrants. They've got 60 million sheep there and 3 million people, and vast amounts of empty land. But the point is, once you put your foot on New Zealand soil, you're entitled to all kinds of benefits at the expense of the taxpayers. And therefore, the taxpayers don't want you. So it's not just a question of the number of people in the land, it's a question of what kind of system do you have. And one of Germany's problems, one of the reasons for the great hostility to immigration in Germany, is that they are a welfare state. If this was a place where you come in and it's up to you to support yourself, I suspect you'd have a lot less resistance to immigration.
Quote, when only 2% of immigrants from Japan to the United States go on welfare, while 46% of the immigrants from Laos do, there is no single pattern that applies to all immigrants. Everything depends on which immigrants you're talking about and which periods of history. Okay, here's the assignment. The period is today, and the immigrants we're talking about are the roughly 11 million, that seems to be the best estimate, roughly the 11 million who are in this country illegally, overwhelmingly.
Much higher than that now. This video is not quite as old as the first one we watched, but it's probably more like 20 million now.
From Mexico. President Obama has issued an executive order protecting about 5 million of them from deportation and other legal penalties.
There you go. Obama had quite a lot to do with the immigration problem, illegal immigration problem in this country.
A humane act.
Well, see, one of the things about the immigration debate is they talk about immigrants in the abstract, and there are no immigrants in the abstract, as that passage indicates. And we don't know who those people are that are here. They may all be PhDs from the University of Chicago, in which case they should all stay. Or they may in fact be people who majored in sociology at Berkeley, in which cases get them all out of here as soon as possible. But we don't know. That's one of the problems of so-called immigration policy. We don't have an immigration policy unless we control the border. It doesn't.
And it finally did it. Who did it? Who finally got control of the border? Not Obama, not Biden. No, it was Trump. And now we have next to zero illegal immigration coming through the Mexican border, which is pretty amazing. It's pretty crazy that's
It
happening.
doesn't matter what our policy is. If anybody who wants to cross the border can cross, then our policy is just a bunch of words on paper.
Okay, so I think I hear you. I think I can deduce from that set of comments two policies. One is, for sure, you get control of the border.
Yes.
That's just obvious. We get control of the border. But from that point forward, you're as dubious about the editorial position of the Wall Street Journal, which is consistently pro-immigrant, as you are dubious of the President of the United States, because your point is neither one of them really knows in enough detail
Yes.
who these 11 million people are, whether they're doing net good or harm to the economy. So you don't buy the Wall Street Journal argument that on net, surely they're doing more good than harm, more economic good than harm. You don't buy that?
No. And especially when they're trying to talk about having people in agriculture. I mean, this is a country that has had a chronic surplus of agricultural output for decades on end, costing the taxpayers billions upon billions of dollars.
But because the federal government subsidizes the output, the surplus, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, yes. And in fact, I think the federal government subsidizes the water that creates the surplus that it then subsidizes again.
That's been the case since the 1930s under FDR. I mean, they were destroying tons of crops, the burning food, paying farmers to create food that was unnecessary, and then they decided they overreacted and they burnt all the food, culled tons of cows and pigs.
And I think that any discussion of people in the abstract drives me crazy, because there are no abstract people. 100 years ago, people understood that. And so when there was a debate about immigration, there was a multi-volume set of tomes about the characteristics of the immigrants from various countries. How do their kids do in school?
They had the guts to be picky.
Yes.
They said, we'll take some.
Yes.
But they better do us good.
Yes.
Okay. So
That's
what
interesting.
kind of debate would you like to... Congress, as I mentioned a moment ago, has just fallen to the control of Republicans, both houses. Republicans aren't going to be able to move much legislation because the president can still veto it. What kind of debate should they have? What kind of hearings should they hold on immigration?
They should find out what kind of people, how are the people that we know about now, how are their kids doing in school? What is their crime rate? What is their disease rate? All those things. That matters.
Republicans are in charge of, everything now too, and we're passing next to no legislation. I think we're establishing some kind of record for a lack of legislation being passed.
They brought out all these kids, and I said, these are just kids. Well, kids do grow up, and they have other kids. We don't know. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. We don't have a clue.
And here's another video for Thomas Sowell and the Black educational success stories, how they are totally ignored by the intellectual elite in the media, politics, and academia.
Pathology has held an enduring fascination for researchers, and nowhere more so than in the study of Black Americans. Isolated successes receive occasional attention, but large-scale or institutional progress and excellence seem to be almost shunned. With all the voluminous outpourings on Black educational pathology, there has been an almost total neglect of Black educational successes.
Yes.
Why?
Now, that is the question that I have not been able to solve, but which I hope someone in the younger generation will do that. There have been other schools. One that by the time I came along to do my research on Dunbar had already was no longer a school what it had been. But there was one Black school that impressed me enormously. It was in New York City, and I was collecting data, and I went to the principal's office there to ask if he had any data on the test scores of the people in his school. And he said to me, yes, and I'll show it to you later, but you won't believe the data unless you see the students. And so this was in a regular ghetto school. In fact, I phoned a friend I knew in New York and told him I was in town and could we get together for lunch? And I said, I have a rented car, and I told him where I was. He said, "You sure are brave to park a car in that neighborhood." And he said
Oh,
brave,
man.
but I'm sure he meant foolhardy. But nevertheless, and the principal, instead of giving me the usual Potemkin Village tour, he said, "We'll walk down this hallway on each of these floors, and you pick out whichever room you want to go into, and we'll come in there and sit for a while." And so that's what we did, on every floor in the building. And I came in, and this is just a typical ghetto school. All those kids spoke the King's English. All of them had very good answers to all the questions that were asked, and it was just as if it was some middle class or higher place. And I just 2 or 3
I'm so glad that's the direction it's going. These people speak well, answering questions well. That's amazing.
rooms on each floor, and it's all the same. And only after that did he turn the test results over to me. And this school was far superior to any of the other schools in its district, and it was by no means any better off socioeconomically than their neighborhood was certainly no better. But it could be done. That was half a century ago. Nobody that I know of has ever taken the slightest interest in that school.
That's an amazing thing to talk about, and how those people were so successful despite poorer socioeconomic status. I think it has a lot to do with discipline and responsibility, and public schools are not pushing that anymore. If you act out in public schools, it's like the entire education system, the entire school becomes all about you and nothing else. So we need to start taking the people that act out of class, so that the other 90% of students can work and get things done and improve their lot in life. I also think that public schools are just a failure. Many of you have probably heard or read about John Taylor Gatto and his experiences. After he spent 30 years as a teacher, he won many teaching awards. I think it was in New York, and then decided that public school prisons were a big waste of time and were wasting children's childhoods. And I think that's true. We need to learn more real skills. But anyways, thanks for watching the video. Like and share, subscribe, leave a comment. It's all very much appreciated. Thank you.